I think that the only way to build your sort of audience now is to find that niche, whatever defines you, and really focus on that. What do you stand for? If your social media handle were to be a visiting card, what is the one line it would say? So to me, that is what needs to be done more of. And it was this very cute little agony aunt column, and it had local news for like kids, and it had cartoons in it. And my father actually, he took that paper and he got it photocopied on pink sheets, and then I went and I kind of distributed it amongst children. After that, I became the school magazine sort of editor. I was at DPS Arkipuram and at DPS Vasant Vihar. And I was working through college. I was working with the Indian Express for about 3 years, where they had something called Channel Y, which was like this youth supplement that they did. I was very clear that I wanted to join Cosmo. At that time, there were only two international magazines. There was Elle and there was Cosmo. And I was very certain, and I don't know if all of you believe in the law of sort of attraction, and if you can think it, then you can have it. But when I think back and I think that um, maybe I wanted it so badly that things just happened in that way. So I knew this friend of mine called Kanak, and Kanak knew this girl who worked at Cosmo, and they were looking to hire just one sort of intern. And I ran over to them and I had this very nice sort of interview, and they said, you know what, just come in from like sort of tomorrow and do all the sort of little random work for us. And I got in there, and I remember thinking that this is what I've always wanted to do. I'm going to give it my all. I was one of those very, very sort of irritating enthu cutlets who, if my sort of editor said, hey, listen, who can take this on? I say, oh, me, please, please, please. So, like those really irritating kids who are in like class. But I took on more and more and more work. And as the result, I learned more and more. And at one particular point, I had managed to do all the various things that could be done within the whole sort of magazine world. Uh, they were going to be launching Grazia, which is part of the Times of India group, and they were looking to hire somebody to kind of head it. And I was too young. I was 23 at that point. So they said, oh, no, she lacks sort of experience, maybe not. But they still luckily chose to interview me. And it's a bit of luck where they actually liked me. They were still not sure. So I went through a ton of different interviews. And finally, a couple of months later, they said, you know what, just come on board. You're young and you don't really have what we really need, but you seem like you could do it. And I joined Grazia and I launched Grazia. And 3 years later, I got a call from Cosmo, from my then publisher, saying, listen, we've got this opening here. Do you want to come back and head it? So that was the entire journey.
I think that sounds amazing. I think, from being the Enthu cutlet to having to face a lot of Enthu cutlets at this point, I'm sure. All right. So, if I were to ask you, in hindsight, what do you think were your most significant career turning points?
I think I had one most crucial turning point, which is when I joined as the Cosmos sort of intern and I was made into the trainee a couple of months later. And my boss was my sort of editor. She quit, and she quit taking the full team with her. So I was the only one left because I was the trainee, and there was one person from the art team, but everybody had gone, from the beauty editor to the fashion editor to the features editors to the senior writers. Everyone left with her. And I think that, and I'm glad for it, because at that moment I was a bit tense, because I was still kind of learning, but I also saw it as this huge opportunity. And I really, and I really, caught on to that and said, okay, maybe I can do beauty and fashion and features and lifestyle. And I remember that I wouldn't go back home for like three nights. It was still a like joke where I used to have cans of Red Bull lying at my desk. But that was really when things turned, because suddenly, from being a very, very junior trainee, I was being able to do the work. So I got a few double promotions. And I think if that team hadn't left, if things hadn't really just fallen sort of apart, I wouldn't have ever got to learn all those things because there were so many other people kind of above me. So when they left and when we had nothing else to do, there was no other option but for me to do everything, from the junior most task to the senior most task. And when my new sort of editor joined, she was very kind.
I think Nandini, you've put yourself on mute by mistake. Yeah, we can't hear you, Nandini. I think your mic's on mute. Yeah, your mic's on mute actually.
Sorry, I think I was muted for some
No,
reason.
yeah, we can hear you now.
Can you all hear me now?
Nice thumbs up would be nice, guys. Yeah, yeah. Okay. All right. So yeah, coming back. So do you still have cups of coffee lying around on your work desk, or have you outgrown the whole caffeine Red Bull thing?
I literally have 14 cups of tea every single day. And I think it's because I need slight sugar rushes because I love tea. And it's not like I like tea. I think I just like genie, So I have so much tea. I have cut back on my coffee because it was making me a little bit jittery. But tea is I have a tea in the morning and I have a tea before going to bed. And I have 10 cups in the middle of those two.
Well, to chai with chini. All right. So, we have a fun question here actually. What do you like and dislike the most about being an editor?
I love most things about being, I love what I do. And I think that what I like most is that I get to work with a really fun, bright, creative lot. My team is a very sort of bright, sort of enthusiastic and hardworking lot. So to work with them really is the best joy. And I think through my job, I get to meet a ton of really cool startups and entrepreneurs, people like you. I get to meet everybody from the fashion community. And I think it's nice to be having the voice to also reach out to so many lakhs of girls, every single day. So to me, that is the biggest bonus of my job. And I think what I don't like is that it's a little bit, because it is a deadline based job and we've got monthly deadlines, weekly deadlines, daily ones. At times it can get a bit overwhelming, where you're like, God, I'm just always running around. I'm just always going from a meeting to a call to a deadline to a client chat to looking at layouts. So there are some days when I think, oh, I just can't take it. I'm so tired. But then I think that the one great thing about what we do is that there's just something new happening every single day. There's a new launch, there's a new celebrity interview, there's some new hashtag, there's some new meme. And that just gets me really kicked about what I do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I can completely, being in the digital space myself, and even like Cool Kanya as well. I think we can completely relate to something new and exciting happening every other day. So I think that's something which it's definitely a plus. Coming to the whole notion about being in the digital space. Since you've been around for such a long time, you took over the reins of
COD मांग रहे थे, अब आपको डायरेक्ट ऑनलाइन पेमेंट करनी है.
All right, I think someone's having an argument with the credit card company. I would love if they can.
ऑनलाइन पेमेंट कैसे करूं, कहां करूं?
All right, where is this coming from? Oh God, I'm
little. कहां ऑनलाइन पेमेंट अभी कैसे कर सकती हूँ भैया? वो तो जब डाल पे.
There's a Natasha online, I think.
Yeah. Hi, Natasha. Could you please mute yourself and have your very interesting argument with your credit card guy some other place? I think it would be a lot of fun for us to hear it in another moment. All right, coming back to Nandini. So, we were talking about the whole digital space and the spectrum, right? So, you've been around for such a long time. So, what do you think you have to keep in mind when, the difference in creating content for print versus digital? And I'd also get back to the idea about how, it's the year 2020 and print is as an idea in itself is ceasing to reduce every other day. But for now, I think what I'd really like to sort of know is what do you keep in mind when you have to think about the difference in creating content for print versus for digital?
Yeah, So, I mean, of course, print and digital just two totally different beasts, you know. Digital is like this fast moving monster who is coming at you 24/7. You don't know where to look. This is something happening constantly. Print is more of pure journalism. You're given time to interview people. You're given time to think of your questions. You can actually, it is a more relaxed pace, and therefore it can be a lot more beautiful. You know, you can be more creative with it because you can do a, you know, you can actually go and shoot and you can create something lovely and you can put that out. You can think a little bit longer. You can write and you can rewrite copy until you are happy with it. Digital is now, right? So digital is about doing everything immediately. Priyanka Chopra is getting married. You better be the first magazine to put that out, and also reach out to her PR and say, listen, we need to sort of interview her about this. Can we get pictures of their wedding? Blah, 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 blah. So the digital pace is just so much faster. Plus, it is a slightly noisier territory, you know, because there's just so much happening in it that you have to be a little bit creative and a little bit clever in making sure that you are standing out, that your voice is being heard. Because today, everybody has a like voice. It's not only brands, magazines, people, everybody has that voice, right? So when there are lakhs and lakhs and lakhs of these voices, I see it as a large hall with millions of people, and you want to make sure that out of these millions of people, the right people or your audience can actually hear you speak, you know. So I think that digital just needs that much more work. Plus, because it is so fast, it's more prone to errors, you know. So you have to be extra careful there as well. To me, I like quick paced things, so I love digital. I'm also the digital editor for Harper's Bazaar and for Brides Today. So it's a constant. So in a day, I will look at Cosmo, Harper's, Brides, and then back to Cosmo Print, and then again Cosmo, Harper's, Brides. So it's a very active area.
I think that's very interesting, and I'm glad you brought up the whole idea of the noise in digital, because that's what actually my next question was all about. Speaking of digital, I think what do you think it means to create content in the year 2020, when in a moment where when the competition in the field of content creation is so fierce, where every
Yeah.
other creator is hustling and vying to become an influencer, so to say.
Yeah.
What do you think it means to create content in 2020?
I think that to create content forever is to be sort of authentic, you know, and I think that what people want now, you see, earlier when we first saw sort of influencers coming in with their beautiful clothes or their lovely makeup or their beautiful hair, it was it it felt really good because we hadn't seen people dress up in that way apart from television shows or from movies or from sort of magazines. Suddenly, people like us were looking fabulous and they were putting out their glamorous lifestyles on the internet. I feel what has happened over the last couple of years is that everyone's doing it, right? So we have thousands and lakhs of beauty influencers. We've got lakhs of fashion sort of influencers. To me, it really depends on how authentic your voice is. Is your voice standing out? Are you being honest? Good and bad both, you know? Are you standing for something? Are you standing for maybe more conscious fashion? Or are you standing for more glamorous makeup versus vegan makeup? Whatever it is, I think finding your own niche is the most crucial thing. You can't be everything. You can't be a beauty expert, fashion expert, decor expert, lifestyle expert. I think that the only way to build your sort of audience now is to find that niche, whatever defines you, and really focus on that. What do you stand for? If your social media handle were to be a visiting card, what is the one line it would say? So to me, that is what needs to be done more of.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm really glad you brought up the whole idea about authenticity, because, as we mentioned, as we've been talking about how there is so much noise in digital today. And, it's almost like, it's so many times when the whole idea about creating content, it gets reduced to a very basic place of, vying for likes and
Yeah.
comments and shares. So, in a space like this, how do you think, what do you think about the whole idea about performance versus authenticity? There's this need to be authentic, there's the need to put your own
Yeah,
voice out there. But there's also, somewhere down the line, I think there's also the pressure to constantly keep performing for an
yeah,
audience, to be able to, cater to their needs. So how
yeah.
do you think, how important is that balance between authenticity and performance?
Um, I think I would say that the correct balance is to be sort of authentic, but to also perform very, very well. Because you see, the social media space is like a free marketing tool, which we've never had before. I mean, bear in mind that Instagram is not even 11 years old, or I think it's barely sort of 11 years old. So until even a decade back, we did not have this tool. We had no way to either talk about our own lives or to promote our brand or to launch something new. None of us had that opportunity. So to me, social media is the best free tool that we've been gifted to really get our voice and our brands and our marketing out. That said, I, I mean, and now there is, of course, proof of all of this, that it also causes people tremendous sort of anxiety, depression. There's this constant FOMO. There's so much toxicity on the internet, and I'm actually stunned at times. I am stunned that people can put up a sort of comment saying you are ugly or you will be raped, and actually think that is okay, and that they can get away with it. So I think that, in fact, there was this one girl in my team called Shri Parna, and once she said to me that she only follows people who make her feel good. So she doesn't follow anybody with a perfect body. She doesn't follow anybody who is talking about things that she does not sort of relate to, or that she doesn't like. She only follows, she kind of curates her own social media feed so that when she opens it, all that pops up is things that make her smile or that make her feel happy. And I found that a very, very sort of interesting thing to have said, because the point is that I follow things that are more relevant. So I will follow them because I feel that they are sort of important to me for some work, etc., etc. I don't follow them because they make me feel happy, But maybe that's a thought, It's a sort of interesting thought. I think that there are two parts to it. Part number one is marketing, which I wholeheartedly support. Whether you're launching your own book or your own brand or just your own personal brand, I think that we have never had this kind of a tool given to us where we can push our brand forward. So please keep on doing that. On a more personal level, I think given that given that social media doesn't make us feel good constantly about our lives, if you feel it is not making you feel good, maybe to follow Shri Parna's sort of advice and just unfollow certain people, or not subject yourself to this daily feeling of FOMO, sort of anxiety, and not feeling like you're not good enough.
Absolutely. Personally also, always it's very recently that, being a creator in the field itself, you start feeling like the kind of responses itself you get, they are so polarized. One's like, where you feel really overwhelmed, you feel like you've touched people's lives, but there's also like this entire other spectrum, which is really difficult to ignore at times, and I'm glad you brought that up, because which is what my next question was to, even Cosmopolitan as a brand, you guys are constantly putting out some amazing content, from championing all body sizes, exploring appearance based discrimination, to the power of femininity. And it's the year 2020 again, as I keep mentioning. So what I've personally always felt is that, with a strong voice comes the responsibility to be socially conscious, especially now, because as we've mentioned, the world is so polar, the field of social media in itself is so polarized. But what do you think in terms of, how do you tackle that responsibility of being socially conscious and, to responding to things in a way that is that you are, sort of responding to it consciously as well? What do
Yeah.
you think about that?
So I feel that there's a slight balance here, right? And I feel that, first of all, whatever I put out on my own social media feed, I don't think very much sort of about it. I try and be real. I'll talk about things like Uncle Chips because I love them, or I'll talk about things like my days of having terrible acne. Maybe there's a certain image that I should be technically putting out there, which is a little bit more professional or a bit more stoic or a bit more proper. But I don't think very much about my own social media handle. I try and be real. I try and talk about
चार्ज
things
होतोय
I care about, you know.
चार्ज होतं कसं घेऊन गेलो
I am just going to try and yeah, okay, there it is.
So I try and talk about the things that I care sort of about. Regarding social sort of responsibility, I think obviously everyone has that, influencers sort of especially. I just don't like the fact that of late people are kind of forcing influencers to take certain stands, you know. To
Right.
me, like I feel very passionately about sort of animals, you know. That's my personal passion. And if I see that someone's being cruel to animals, or like somebody needs help, I will speak about it because I would like to speak about it. Would I be okay with being forced to talk about things? Maybe not. But I think it also comes from your own personal beliefs. Like I believe in the fact that for far too long, women have been told that they must look like this. This is what beautiful is. If you're not in this beautiful box, then you're out, you know?
Yeah.
Or we're told that, oh, you know what, women at work have to be like this, you know? Or, oh, so-and-so is too pushy, so-and-so so sort of aggressive, so-and-so is more like man. Anything that I stand for, I put it out there because I know that even if there are 50 people who do not sort of agree with me, there are 50 people who do sort of agree with me. And I think that we have to have space for all kinds of thoughts, for all kinds of beliefs, and not push people to have to take this one side, that you have to only do this or you have to only talk about that. That is my own personal view. For the magazine, we obviously stand for women's rights, we stand for feminism, we stand for sort of equality, we stand for body positivity, we stand for being fun and being fearless, and we stand for being the best versions of yourself. So every day we try and put something out, keeping that core belief, that little pyramid in our minds.
Absolutely. And on that note, and on that very uplifting note, I'm going to take a few questions from the audiences, and people have already been pouring their questions in, so I'm just going to take
Sure.
a few of them.
I'd have to answer them.
Yeah. So we have a question from Raj Lakshmi, which says, okay, yeah. How do you manage Cosmo, Harper, etc., and keeping their voice different and their ideas different?
Sure. Hi, Raj Lakshmi. Well, it's not the easiest, but my trick is that I actually mentally sort of imagine who that person is. I'm like, okay, who is the Cosmo girl? So I've given her this name of Gayatri. So I'm like, okay, there's Gayatri. Gayatri is the Cosmo girl. Where does Gayatri live? Where does she go and shop? Where does she go and party? What's the last holiday that she took? And that is my Cosmo reader. Then I will make a similar personality chart for the bride's reader and for the Harper's Bazaar reader. And I put everything down, from the kind of car that this person may be having, to what kind of man she might be dating, to what her hair is like, to where she goes out, etc. And that just helps me actually curate and tailor make the content sort of across. So if it's the Harper's woman, I know she's a little bit older. She is very into knowing what is already trendy, but she's not a trend conscious woman. Whereas the Cosmo woman, Gayatri cares about trends. So I try to, each time that we think of a new story, I say, okay, would a Gayatri like to read this? Or is it better suited to a Brides Today? Or is it better suited to a Harper's Bazaar? So that's the way that I do it.
Right. I think that's very interesting because, and I think a few pointers for all the creators out there. It always sort of, I personally completely agree with this. It's always helpful to create an audience persona for yourself. What does your audience do? What do they eat? What kind of a lifestyle they live? I think it's something which we at Cool Kanna also try to, sort of incorporate in our strategies and stuff. All right. I have another question. I have a couple of questions from Malika here. So the first one is, what are the qualities of a good fashion editor? What do you think are the qualities of a good fashion editor? And another question that we have from her is, what all does one need to do to get an internship at a fashion magazine?
Okay, so I'll answer the first question first. To be a good fashion sort of editor, first you have to be a very good stylist. And that is not just simply putting together beautiful clothes, but it's also about knowing what a mood board is, what a trend is, who are you trying to reach out to. There's a lot of celebrity management, because when we shoot with like stars, a star will say, oh, I hate this dress. And then you feel really bad, so there's a lot of that. But the most critical thing is, let us say that you've already got your style down pat, that you know all the big trends and you know what the colors of the season are, and you've got great personal taste. I think the two most critical things are, number one, having an eye if for the best items. Let's say that checks are in, okay, or prints are in a market of 1 lakh prints. Can you find that one best print which needs to go into the sort of magazine or on your sort of model? Number one. Number two is actually being super duper sort of organized, because a stylist does a lot of call-ins. So we call in a bunch of different things. So first of all, the fashion editor goes through over 100 collections, and she picks out the pieces. So literally, if I were to ask my fashion sort of editor, listen, what was Gaurav Gupta's collection in 2017? She'll actually know it, because she has studied those collections in and out, and she knows every single garment, So I think that it is to be really super duper organized. You call in for the garments, then they all have to be checked out first to make sure that they work for your look. Then they have to be styled. If there's a single tear or a single ruin, we have to pay for it. And then it is sent back. And all this is done within a 48-hour time period, And in the middle, you're also, of course, you're like sort of trying to manage the guy who has come to steam sort of iron. You're also organizing lunch for the crew. You are making sure that the spot boy is, fine, taken care of, that the sort of photographer understands what the mood is, that the lighting is okay, that there's nobody throwing a big tantrum in a corner. So there's a lot of things that go into it. But I think that if I were to take away fashion editor or a bank person or anything at all, it's just that willingness to go the extra mile, and to be organized.
Right.
I think that is what happens. Is my voice echoing?
Guys, is it? I think it's perfectly audible to me
Okay.
at this point, at least.
And for your
Alright.
second question, for the
It is
fashion
echoing.
magazine sort of to sort of apply for it, just send us an email telling us what you've done. The first thing that we look at is a person who has already styled their own shoot. It doesn't have to be a proper shoot. It could be with your friends. It could be at college. But we look to see what your sort of, what your own personal style is. So just a little mood board saying, I have shot these images, I have styled my cousin, or I've styled my best friend, and these are the looks that I have made. That will really make things happen faster.
All right, I think that was very, very insightful. Thank you so much for that, Nandini. And I have a very, very interesting question here, which when first popped up, honestly, the first thing I wondered was, why am I not asking this? So here it goes. How did you start managing rejections on the content that you worked really hard on?
So, I haven't really been good at handling criticism. I'm the kind of person who really sinks into, pain to say, oh my God, I'm not good enough, etc. I think that the only good thing that I have, which I think I also owe to my own mom, and my father, actually. So, when I was a little girl and I was learning how to cycle, I must have been 5 or 6 or whatever. And when you're young and you're learning to like cycle, I would keep on falling off. And my father never said, oh my God, you poor thing. He would laugh. He's like, it's okay, get up. Come on, go at it again, And I would again go, because, as kids, you are like, oh, should I cry a little bit? Maybe I'll get some like love, But he would say, come on, get up. And I think that throughout life, when things haven't gone well, my parents have always said, just get up and just do it. It's fine. Leave it. Because, the human tendency is to feel sorry for yourself and say, oh, they didn't like this, or they don't like me, or I didn't do a very good job of it. Over the years, I have learned to say, okay, maybe I didn't do that well. Let me do the next thing, the, the next thing better. Maybe earlier it took me 2 or 3 days to get to that point. Today, I can do it within half an hour or an hour. So something goes wrong, I'm like, oh no. And within half an hour, I'm like, you know what, leave it, come on, come on, move. I think that is the way that I have dealt with things, where I say, okay, I did that wrong, but what can I do next that will be even bigger, even kind of better? And I think it's the little girl on that cycle, and I just jump up and I get back on the cycle.
Absolutely. I think we're all somewhere down the line, just little girls on cycles trying to figure our way out into this world. All right. I have a question from Parul here. Did you face issues like sexism and pay gap during the course of your career, especially in the days when you were struggling to make a place for yourself?
Parul, hi. I think that for me, luckily enough, there was no sexism as such, because we're a more female dominated company. I mean, Cosmo, in fact, we've got about, I think, only 10% men in the in our team. But I think that there is everyday sexism that happens during meetings, events, your sort of interactions over a phone call. Um, what I have actually noticed that really irritates me is when someone doesn't let you speak, and they keep cutting you off in the middle, or when maybe because somebody's voice is a little bit louder, so they will speak sort of above you, and you have to quietly wait for your turn. So I have learned a little trick which I have used over the last years, where I just put my little finger. I'm like, wait, let me finish. Let me finish. I'm not finished yet. So that's what I do, and I think that people are more careful regarding open sexism now because of all the talk that's been happening. But everyday sexism sort of exists every single day of all of our lives. And why just at work, even at home with our friends when you go out at night? I mean, I keep on telling people who say, oh, why do we need feminism? And I actually tell them that we need feminism because I don't feel safe going for a walk at like 1:30 in the night I mean by myself, but a man can. A man can wear shorts and a t-shirt and go out for a walk at 2 a.m. I don't have the guts to do it. So I think that, and I hope that I've answered that question, Parul.
You mentioned at the beginning of this question that, since Cosmopolitan is largely dominated by women everywhere and it's barely 10% men, do you think it's easier that way? Do you think it's easier to, I mean, I don't know. Do you think it's just easy? I think it's just easier.
So, I have never looked at the people that I work with as genders. And in fact, that could be a little flaw in me as well, because I just look at them as people who are either good or bad at what they do, So I mean, I have worked very, very late hours, and I sort of expect that everybody, if there's work that needs to be done, will also have that same belief system, And I think that the women in my team and the men, they're absolutely fabulous human beings. They are good. They are good people. They are hardworking people. They are people who care about the company, who care about the brand. So I've never really viewed them as a man or a woman or a guy or a girl. Yeah, I've just never. In fact, now that you are sort of actually mentioning it to me, and I'm thinking, I really haven't. If you're good at what you do, I don't care what your gender is.
All right, I think that's very insightful. All right, we have a couple of questions from here. How to create a disruptive brand in a crowded marketplace?
Okay, that's a vast area, but we will try to break it down. How to create a brand in a vast market space. So, if you can just quickly pop up and message what this brand is. Is it a clothing brand? Is it a beauty brand?
All right. While we circle back, guys, I'm going to take just a couple more questions because we have yet to be waiting for the fun section at the end of this, which is the rapid fire section. And a couple more questions here. This is a very interesting one, actually. Okay. I'm just going to, okay. There's a question from Shilpa Kara here. When you come across something that's good for the magazine, but might not be good with your personal beliefs or your feelings, how do you go about it?
Gosh. So that's
Yeah.
that's a tough one. Thank you for asking that. So I have been trying to give up leather, for instance, okay, for the longest time, and I have cut down my purchase of leather dramatically. I might still buy a couple of things off now, but I try to not have too much leather. So, is that fair that the magazine doesn't carry leather because I don't want to promote leather? No, that's obviously not fair. So when someone tells me that, listen, can you please talk about how this is pure leather, it's calf leather, and blah blah blah. Personally, I say no. But if it's a beautiful brand and if it's a beautiful product, it obviously goes into the sort of brand magazine because that's a personal choice. Regarding fur, I have a very strong stand. We do not sort of allow fur to go within the sort of magazine. Maybe that's my own personal choice. But I think that the kind of cruelty that we see around fur, I don't think anyone needs it, you know? So that will not go into the sort of magazine. We do not sort of encourage fur at all. Leather, I let the magazine carry it. Personally, I'm trying to cut down my own usage. Similarly, I have a personal view that we need to promote Indian sort of models, you know, and I think that in the middle, there were too many non-Indian models who were being featured. So because it was good for the brand and it was good for the general community, we took a call where I said that we will no longer feature anybody who's a non-Indian model. So we try to show different tones, duskier tones, lighter tones, but just to give that sort of opportunity to the young upcoming Indian girls. So I think it's a bit of a balance.
Right. I'm going to take this one last question from the audience here because it's something which I think can be very interesting. So what is the one advice that you would like to give to every editor out there?
I mean, the other editors there are absolutely fabulous. They don't need me to tell them anything at all. I think that if I had to give them a piece of, maybe not advice, but if I were just to chat with them, I think that moving forward, it'll be nice that all of us should be working together as a larger magazine community to really get the right subjects and topics and conversations out there.
Absolutely. All right, now on to the fun rapid fire section. It's personally one of my favorite sections of the whole conversation. All right, just a few rules here and there. You can take, we would love for the answers to be crisp and rapid as much as possible. And guys, if you have some very short, crisp, rapid fire questions, I would love to see them on board on the chat section and maybe I'll just take them up. So up to you guys, but they have to be very short, one-word answers. Let's just look at it that way. All right, so let's begin. My first question to you is, what are you watching or reading currently?
Dr. Martin, which is this show on Netflix about this very, very angry doctor who has moved from London to a small town.
All right, I have a question here, which actually I really want to take. What's your favorite food?
Pasta. I can eat so much pasta, it's not even normal now. I'm trying to cut it down because I have a little pasta baby, so I have to stop.
All right. What is the one career advice you would like to give to your younger self?
This will be a non-rapid fire answer. I think to be a little bit less hyper. I think when I started out and I was 23 or 24, I was much, much younger than the team that I was working with was. And I feel like I had picked up certain bossy ways of being, you know, and I was so tough on myself. I was extremely demanding to, you know, sort of expect everything to be just great. And I think I would go back and tell myself, you know what, relax. You don't have to be this, you know, you don't have to pretend to be this tough boss woman. You can just be you and, you know, you can still get all the work done.
Right. Which is your favorite brand?
Ooh, tough one. My favorite brand, well, as of right now, I'm loving what Amit Agarwal is doing. But I like many. I mean, it's hard to even say one.
Okay. What about, have you ever felt burnt out?
No, but I felt overwhelmed. I felt overwhelmed several times. And I think just turning off my phone helps me get back into the zone.
All right, I'm going to take Raj's rapid fire question. And this is very interesting. Delhi or Bombay?
Delhi. Sorry.
Uh, all right. My next question to you is, what is your biggest fear?
I think losing my loved ones.
All right. And what do you think has been your biggest career faux pas? Something that you really regret doing in your career?
I think, as I said earlier, demanding excellence of myself and of other people. And, I think that one thing that I was taught later was that sometimes good enough is also good. You don't have to constantly chase everything to be perfect and get riled up and rile everybody up and get hyper about things. So I think that that is the one area that I'm glad. I just want to quickly add here that, when I was growing at work, one of my mentors said to me that there's a lot to be said about sort of experience, because you learn various things. So while you may be bright and you may be a hard worker, you still don't know how to actually manage people, and to me that is the most critical thing. So that took me a little bit of time to learn, so I'm glad that that learning happened.
Right. And who is your favorite personal creator?
My favorite personal creator. Wow. I mean, I follow all of them. We've got the Cosmo Blogger Awards coming up soon, so I really cannot reveal at this point because we've got voting going on as we speak.
Well, all right. I think we'll have to wait for the awards to come out for this one then. Who do you think is your role model?
My mom, she went back to college 2 or 3 years sort of ago to do her PhD. She's an art historian. She's a doctor in Indian sort of miniature art. She's writing her first book. She cooks beautifully. She's so stylish. It's unreal. So her.
All right. Between work from home or office, which one do you want to choose?
Work from home. I didn't think I would love it so much. And I used to love being at work. Now all I want to do is to work from home.
That's very interesting. All right. Okay. What's your holiday idea? What's your perfect idea for holiday?
Beach, always. Warm weather, water, waves, sand.
All right. What do you think has been your biggest career accomplishment? Something that you'll always be proud of?
I think when we launched the first work from home issue in the month of April, this is literally a few days after the nation went into a complete lockdown, and we did things that we never that no brand thought would ever be sort of, that you can do from home. So we shot a cover story, we shot a fashion shoot, a beauty shoot, all from home within the first 10 to 15 days of the lockdown. So I'm quite proud of that.
All right. And what's your moonshot? If there was nothing bogging you down, if you didn't have any limitation on resources, if you knew you'd succeed at whatever you take up, what would be your moonshot?
So I'd probably be do a little magic show, because as a little girl, I would actually perform magic tricks. So all the aunties and uncles and little children, I'd say, come and see me do magic, and maybe that magician.
All right. My last question to you, and one of my personal favorite ones, is what makes you a cool Kanya?
The belief that nothing cannot be done. Everything can be done.
All right. I think this has been amazing. Thank you everybody for joining in, and thank you so much, Nandini, for giving us all of this time and answering all of our questions with so much patience. I think it was lovely to have you on board.
Thank you all, and thank you all for all of your many things that you're asking me. Have a great week ahead of you.
Thank you so much, Nandini.
Bye.
Bye.